Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn on Understanding 5S in Lean Construction. We're joined today by Brett Blake from Lean Construction International. So I'll pass over to Brett in a minute. But just before I do, if you have any issues, I'd recommend logging off of the platform that you're on and logging back in again. That normally sorts it. If not, please feel free to use the chat box in the bottom right-hand corner for any technical support. Please also use the chat box for any questions or comments that you'd like to ask. So I'll pass over to Brett.
Okay, thank you very much, Imogen. Welcome to this Understanding 5S in Lean Construction Lunch and Learn. So the session is going to be broken up into a number of elements. We're going to do a welcome introduction and how to use some of the interactive elements of this platform. Then we're going to look at 5S in Lean Construction. I'm then going to take you through the 5 steps to 5S. And then finally, we'll look at the 5S best practice. And I've got some photos that we can use as a talking point around what 5S looks like in Lean Construction. And then finally, we'll finish off with about 15 minutes questions and answers. So this Lunch and Learn will provide you with an understanding of 5S in Lean Construction, and it'll detail what 5S is and what best practice looks like. For you to use the interactive functions, you can use something called the QR reader on your mobile phone or tablet technology. You do this by just scanning the QR code. What this will allow you to do is add some notes or questions into this online platform that we can use and share after the event is completed. Everything that we take you through today, I will share as a PDF document through Imogen, so you've got it as a reference point for future reference for what we've gone through today. Okay then. So 5S in Lean Construction. It's one of the lean enablers that we have. It's one of the 5 lean enablers. What we typically look at is 5S workplace organisation first, because that leads in problem solving and continuous improvement, standardised work and visual management. So 5S, what is it? Well, it's one of the foundation tools for continuous improvement. It's a good condition. 5S is a good condition which enables the stable deployment of other tools. What could drive 5S within workplace organisation? So for you to use 5S, you'll be thinking, well, what are the reasons why and what would be the benefits of doing this within my organisation? So do you currently suffer some of the following items? So do you currently suffer accidents caused when struck by moving or flying falling objects? Do you suffer within your organisation any slips, trips and falls? Do you suffer any issues around material handling, lifting, carrying, or maybe any materials that are left lying around that you wouldn't expect them to be there? Do you sometimes suffer time lost during build, waiting for materials to be found on site and delivered to the workplace? All of these are some of the issues that you could face that would help us or would be helped by the use of 5S or workplace organisation. So this is a great opportunity for you to use now some of the interactive functions of this span wall. So please feel free to add your pointers onto this. And you do this by clicking your mobile phone using the QR code on the QR code reader here. And if you follow the online prompts, you'll be able to put your own pointers across of what you believe your drivers are for 5S within your organisation. So I'll just give you a few seconds to have a go at using that. So one of the reasons I use 5S is about engagement of people. Engagement of people within the continuous improvement process. Are there any other thoughts for anybody else in the team around what their drivers are? Collaboration, absolutely. It's really important within 5S to make sure we're collaborating with all our supply chain and our contractors that are working with us. But that collaboration will actually start to identify opportunities for improvement. We can start to look at those within the 5 steps of 5S shortly. As the name states, It's about organisation of activity, making sure everything that we do adds value. Innovation, absolutely. We can use that innovation from other people and other organisations. Remove waste time and materials. And if we remove waste time and materials, that means that whatever we do within our organisation of our work is actually adding value to our customer or the end user of our service or product. Please feel free to continue to add your thoughts on there, as we will share these at the end. Okay then, so the 5S. So 5S is a 5-step technique that organises, maintains and improves any workplace so that it's safe and supports achievement of your project targets. 5S can be focused on the physical, what you see around you, but it can also be focused on the virtual. So think about the organisation of your filing system, your emails or your desktop. How easy is it to find the correct folder or information immediately when requested? So I'm going to take you through now the 5 steps to 5S. They are sort, set in order, shine, standardise and sustain. And it's an iterative process. So this is something that we would do again and again to keep that continuous improvement cycle going regarding 5S. So sort. What is sort? What is the sort of 5S? So this is our opportunity to sort out what is needed and dispose of what is not. One of the techniques we can use around that sorting is what we call red tagging. So you may have a number of teams that work together across different shifts. And it's important that if we do sort out what is not required, we get an understanding from all of the teams that what we are choosing to remove is agreeable by all. And that red tag and that red tag log can actually help us with that. So over a period of 2 to 3 days, for example, we can get the different shifts and different teams to understand what is important for them to use, what they require, use the red tag, and once there's been a sign off from each of those teams, we can choose to either relocate it or remove it from our areas. So what would you sort? Well, you could sort equipment, materials. You could sort the way things are laid out at point of use. Once you've understood what you've sorted and removed what is not required, this is where we move to the setting order. And when we do the setting order, we've got to think about what is the order that we need to set. Because my order isn't always the one that makes more sense. So I put it to you as a team. What is the order that makes more sense for your team? If we get the order wrong, 5S becomes quite a challenge. So we need to ensure that all people are in agreement with the new order that we set. And I've just got a few pointers on there around how we might set an order. So think about how often it is used. If it is never used, we need to think about removing it from our areas, maybe giving it away, selling it, or disposing of it. If it's something that we use, maybe a piece of equipment, only once or twice a year, this is something we may decide to store in an off-site location and only bring to site when it's required. If we use it once a month, we'd potentially store it in the construction facility. If it's used once a week, we'd store it in the area of point of use. If it's used once a day or more, this is potentially the equipment that we have set around the physical workspace, or maybe we give each individual their own equipment and materials to use. Setting in order is really key. We all need to agree the order that's understood by all, and that's where we then set a standard around that. After we've gone through the setting order, the next S is shine. So shine's not just about clean and tidy, it's about ensuring everything that we have is in an optimal working condition, that the materials are fit for use, that they have good 100% quality and signed off for use. The machines that we have, the maintenance of them is up to date, and there's a schedule in place to make sure that when we come to that equipment, it can be used right first time. The shining part is just like if you have your own car. You don't necessarily shine or clean your car just to make it look nice. It's there to do that visual inspection, to make sure that your tyres are of good condition, that they're pumped up, that your brakes are in good condition and will stop the car. So as you're doing your shine, whether it be at work or in your own spaces, shine's all about the inspection, the check, to make sure what we've set in our order, the things that are important for us, are actually delivering what we expect. Standardise. That's the fourth S. So after we've gone through the sort, set in order, and shine, we need to put a standard that actually sets the way we will work to ensure the first three S's are maintained and deliver the service that we expect. That ensure that we have workplace organisation that's enabling us to deliver value in everything we do in the supply of our service or product to the customer. What does a standardise look like? Well, it could be in the form of a check sheet. And for an example we have here, it's just a 5S check sheet, asking questions in a closed manner to say, are we doing this? Yes or no? And if we are, good, we move on to the next question. And if we're not, we answer no and understand what action we need to take and add this to the action plan to ensure that our S's, our 4 S's so far, are actually delivering that workplace organisation. But the check sheet isn't enough. This is where 5S sustain comes in, the fifth step. And this is our management routine to ensure that we continue to do what is right for workplace organisation to work for us. And the example we have here for the 5S sustain is some sort of housekeeping or 5S workplace organisation board, which highlights the things that we are working on, the activities that we've worked on to improve the 5S condition, what it looked like before, what it looks like after, and how we can maintain that workplace organisation within our business. So that's a quick run through of the 5 S's: sort, set in order, shine, standardise and sustain. Now, one thing I would suggest when you're embarking on your journey of 5S is to understand the area that you want to work on first, and also understand the purpose that you want to achieve around these 5 S's. Is it 5S around safety that you want to focus on? Is it 5S around the workplace organisation to ensure that we're delivering value in everything we do to our customer or client? Once we've set that up, we need to understand the team that we'll be working with. So who is it that's going to be involved? What is it they're going to focus on? And ensure that we set this 5S with an activity. So actually spend some time in organising yourselves and team to work in a current area, and set out an action plan around how you will sort things out, where you will sort them, who will sort them, how will they be disposed of if it's things that we're not needing anymore. Once you've gone through the sort, ensure your team are in a position to argue and organise where they want to set their order and how it will look for them in the future. Make sure that the team is then involved in that shine. And that shine isn't a one-off activity. This is something that should be done on a day-by-day basis to ensure all materials and equipment are there at point of use and ready to use. The standardise, this is something that could keep on improving. So as you go through the 5S, this iterative process, you will find further opportunities for improvement. So it's important that you keep your check sheets and your standards updated. And this will be identified through the 5S sustain, which will help do the check act to ensure what we have in place is working for us. So what are the benefits of 5S? So workplace organisation will promote the relationship between your people and their workplace by, firstly, creating a safe working environment, ensuring that what we have in place is in the right place so that it's a safe place to work. Another benefit is developing consistent processes, which will enable you to produce quality work on time, because you'll have the right equipment that is serviceable in the right place at the right time. You will reduce the need to look for things that aren't working for you. And it'll also, through the very nature of that, drive down operational costs. As well as improving the workplace for individuals, it supports key company policies such as site reduction in accidents. Because we've got an organised workplace that's reducing those elements we mentioned earlier around slips, trips and falls. It will, by the very nature, improve productivity because we'll have the right equipment and materials on hand in the right place at the right time. Because 5S is about everything in its place and everything has a place. And it'll help you with your risk assessments and managing risk. You can build that into your health and safety risk assessments. So while a construction site is different to a factory in that it's constantly physically changing, it can still benefit from the rigorous application of the technique. We just need to be very mindful that as we move through the phases of build and construction, we need to understand who's involved at what time and ensure that the different contractors and supply chain understand the level of 5S that we have on site that they can work with and adhere to. So this is why we've shown the 5S as a cycle, to ensure that we don't just go through one iteration of this. This is a continuous improvement loop. So as we go through different phases of our build and construction, we must consider the sort, set in order, shine, standardise and sustain during each of those phases and the different contractors that we'll be working with. So moving on to this level again, I'd like you to think about what benefits or improvements are you looking for. So I'm just turning on the quick share on this box and you can use exactly the same method using the QR code to access this information. So what are the benefits or improvements you're looking for within your application of 5S? What is the driving force behind why you want to do 5S? For me, it's all about improved efficiency. It's also about safety. We talk about 5S as being sort, set in order, shine, standardise and sustain. But the 6th S, if there was one, is safety, to ensure that everything we do is done in a safe way. Are there any other benefits or improvements you're looking for? Visual management, yes, that is a key driver to 5S. Ensuring that visual management is allowing people to understand the part they play, whether it be setting order of the materials or equipment that we use, or how we move around site and how things are located. Any other thoughts? Value stream mapping is a good technique to use to understand where we would work within our 5S first. So if you've got a value stream map that identifies the end-to-end of your process, and you've identified some wastes and opportunities, that might lend itself to use the 5S to improve those areas that you're finding you've got wastes. And also putting on their standards. So once we have standards in place, it's easier to maintain that foundation that we have for improvement. So if you've got a good 5S standard and everybody understands the part they play in that, that is a good foundation for continuous improvement. Okay, I'll leave that one open if there's any other points that you'd like to add on there. But what I'd like to do now is start to look at some 5S best practice. So we've talked about the sort, set in order, shine, standardise and sustain. And the sustain part is about how do we ensure that what we set out to do is continuously happening. We can do that with an overall audit of the levels of 5S we're aiming to achieve. So this is just an example of the different levels that we have. So if we looked at level 1, this might be your base level and your first journey through 5S. So you may find as a level 1 5S deliverer, you may find there is still some debris around your workplace. Some things may not have their own places. You may come to tools and equipment that's just not fit for purpose at that moment in time. But how do we progress from 1 to 2? This is about how do we train people and develop people in the importance of 5S. Maybe get them involved with a improvement activity. Maybe get them to understand some of the checks that they need to put in place to ensure that they have the standards that they want to adhere to in the future. Then moving from step 2 to step 3, that's probably setting up more training, implementing 5S activities, not just in one area of the business, but across the whole organisation. You may find that there's some improvement in productivity and quality, and that work life is actually starting to improve. We're starting to maybe see at level 3, some of the health and safety issues improve as well. Maybe less near misses or accidents on the site. Level 4, as you start to walk around and do your 5S checks, you'll find that it's very rarely you find something that's out of place. You'll find that people are all adhering to that standard, and that standard is helping to improve the productivity and the efficiency of the site. You may find that we're getting less complaints from our customer base when they're on visits around the state that they see the site in. And level 5, this is where we're at our pinnacle of our 5S. And this is where we now have a culture of 5S. So as people join the organisation, they join the momentum that keeps that organisation in place. When you reach level 5 of a 5S audit, this is where you should be able to share your best practice with other parts of the organisation for them to learn from as well. And also, you're setting the challenge for others to adhere to this way of working within your supply chain. Because if you're at the pinnacle of your 5S, if they're not there themselves, they will hold back the progress of the overall value stream. So 5S can benefit the following areas. It can benefit on site or at the workplace. It could benefit material stores, access routes for both people and vehicles. It can be used in material depots. It could be used in the project office. So think about your designs, your information that's required to support the delivery of a project. How is it stored? How do people access that information? And it can be also used within the off-site and near-site manufacturing facilities. So as we start to move forward into modular design and use other facilities other than the construction site itself, we can ensure that 5S is embedded across the whole value stream to ensure that we have the right materials, the right equipment, the right people working to the right standards, and that the organisation is adding ultimate value to what we're achieving. But please remember, 5S is not a one-off activity. Once we start this momentum of 5S and workplace organisation, it should be part of our everyday activities. Okay then, so I'm now going to just look at some of the best practice. So I've got a number of photos here, and I'm just going to talk through some of them. Some of them are showing best practice, some of them are showing things to watch out for. So the picture we have at the top left on there, we've got an area that isn't fit for purpose, and then we have the same area that's been organised. Think about things, how they're racked, how they're labelled. Do we have lists that actually identify where things are kept so people can go to the point of use straight away? Think about the actual work site itself. For everything that has a place that isn't correct, it's actually stopping work in that area. It's stopping maybe the flow of equipment or people. So think about, as we move through our different phases of construction, how do we keep those areas free from debris, free from materials that aren't of use, so that we can continue to do the work that is important? Think about how things are stored. And when they are stored, how are we storing them in such a way that we're maintaining the quality of that material? We're reducing the impact that damage could have, which would render that material not usable. There's a couple of examples of maybe not a very good organised site. So if we're wanting some of this steelwork or woodwork, how easy is it to access and move out of that storage area? So think about with your 5S, how do we store materials in such a way that we can access them when required? how do we set our 5S up in such a way that the things that we use the most are near the front of our storage area and things that we use least are towards the back? As I mentioned earlier on, 5S isn't just for the construction site itself. It could be for the support functions, whether it be the office, design, or records areas. And as we can see here, we've got many records that look as though they're just not organised at all. But after a 5S, not only have they made those racks easily accessible, but they've also started to number them up in such a way that we can go to a list and find exactly the record we need very easy and efficiently. There's an area here now that's showing a disorganised area and an organised area. So 5S could be about lining out areas on the ground where the equipment needs to be. We can very easily see from the right-hand picture there at the bottom, we can very easily see if something was missing because there would be an empty space or rack. To take this one step further, we could actually put a nameplate there as well that identifies what the piece of equipment is that should be there, and maybe have an opportunity to put a space on where if somebody takes that material or equipment away, they mark on who's taking it. So if we need that equipment in the future and it isn't in the space, we know who to go to get it back. Safety is key, as I mentioned, around 5S. So keeping a clean and tidy site is key to the productivity of the site. But also, many a time when we're working within our construction sites, we're working very close to the general public. So 5S needs to incorporate how we manage the safety of the general public in and around our sites. 5S can be brought out around how we segregate waste, which means we have the right waste going to the right areas, either for recycling or landfill. That in itself can cut costs and also save on wasted time. 5S doesn't have to be an expensive technique. As we see here, this has been done very, very simply with red marker paint. So think about how you want to adapt and adopt 5S within your areas, keeping it simple, keeping the message clear. So 5S doesn't have to just be on the construction site. This is something we can share within our contractor base. So think about how our different contractors in M&E work. If we have a scaffolding team, how are they organised to make sure that they have the right equipment to hand at the right time? A chaotic van will probably lead to a chaotic workplace. Whereas an organised van with the equipment in there means that that worker, that contractor's coming to site, being able to see everything that they need and everything in its place is at use first, is at point of use and can be seen and can be captured right first time. As we start to go through our 5S, think about how we lay things out. So do you need to look at a schematic of what that new area looks like, where the different zones are for the different materials, how we're segregating people from exclusion zones, for example. So think about your 5S, not just the physical, how it looks, but what do you need to have in place as a standard that people can see and understand? I've just got a couple more examples here of 5S. So the way materials are kept clear from the working areas. Palletised, kept in a safe storage area. We have a joinery shop there, making sure that they've got all of the correct joinery materials to hand to make the framework. And we have there, just at the bottom right-hand corner, a cleaning station. And these cleaning stations could be put around the different parts of the site to ensure that the right equipment's available to ensure the cleaning part of the 5S can be maintained. To add to the standard of 5S and share best practice, you may determine or may decide to build your own 5S check sheet to identify with what the good condition looks like. So the previous photos were looking at examples of what good looks like, but this is just showing you now some examples of how to document that. So we have here a good condition of a walkway with barriers segregating the walkway from other areas. We've got some key points that we need to be thinking about to ensure that that happens. And then we've also got responsibility and time in there to ensure that the checks are maintained across different levels of the business and at different times. Because 5S, remember, isn't just about setting that order, it's about setting the standard and then ensuring we've got the sustainment through the management routines of checking that people are adhering to that situation, that new condition that we've set. And there are just some examples of 5S standards. One for walkways, one for material storage, one for a safe walkway between working areas. And then the final one there is about how do we want to keep our meeting, boardrooms or training rooms to a standard so that all people can use them and they've got the right materials and equipment in there to enable them to have a successful meeting. So this is some of the best practice around 5S, some of the examples that other sites are currently using. So it's over to you now. So we've come to the end of our brief presentation around 5S. Please feel free to add any questions into this area that you would like to ask around 5S, maybe how you'd like to apply 5S, or what the starting point is. And I've just switched a quick share on there again, and you'll feel free, please, to use the QR code again to add your points onto the questions there, which I'll put some answers on for you as well. If you don't want to use the quick share on this platform, please feel free to add some of your questions to the chat function that you've signed into for this webinar. So one of the questions I'm often asked within 5S of where do we start? Well, what I tend to do is I have a go look-see on my sites and I understand where some of the biggest issues are first. I'll talk to the people on site and then we start to ask them about what are their frustrations that they currently have. And if it's around material storage or utilisation of equipment or finding the right equipment, that's usually a good starting point. You may find that the organisation around the entrances and exits of your sites or where materials are being delivered, they could be choke points as well. So sometimes that's a good place to start. So we've got a question here. I'm at one of our sites next week, so I'll look at how the site is set up with 5S in mind. Absolutely. And when you do look at that, just see how they're identifying their 5S standard. See if they are handwritten documents, for example, or whether they're laminated documents. I find that if things are laminated and everything looks pristine within a control board, that tells me things aren't necessarily being used. Whereas for me, a good 5S area and good 5S standard looks as though it's being used and all can access and influence an improvement. Good question. So where can I find out more about 5S and how does it link into quality management? So you can find out a little bit more about 5S from myself and my organisation, which is LC International, and I'll share some contact details at the end. But also you can find some more on the Supply Chain School portal. There is a whole section around lean tools and techniques, of which one of them is 5S and workplace organisation. And on that portal, and we'll make sure that the links are sent out to you at the end of this, there are training modules all about 5S and the other lean enablers, which will give you more information and detail about not only what 5S is, but how to apply it. And there's also a little bit of an assessment on there that enables you to understand, have you got a good understanding of the 5S? And the second part of that question, how does it link to quality management? Well, within quality management and your quality management system, you will have methods of organization within there to ensure that you're giving confidence to your processes so that they deliver the quality that's required. So 5S links very, very closely to quality and the building in of quality to the processes that we have. If we've got an organised workplace, we've got organised materials and equipment that we're maintaining to a good level, that in itself will build into the quality that we can offer and building in quality to the services and products that we have rather than inspecting that in at the end. So it's been proven that 5S and workplace organisation with full engagement of a team actually builds and improves quality in the overall process, project or programme. Okay, any other questions that anybody would like to ask? And I think Imogen has just added the 5S workplace organisation to the chat function as a link that you can link into, and you can sign into the supply chain school to actually access that training material. And once you're in the supply chain school, you'll see a raft of other information in there that all links to lean thinking, to organisation, and how you can improve your business. Okay, have we got any more questions coming through?
There aren't any more questions currently, so if anyone does have any questions or comments, please do pop them into the chat box.
Thank you. One question that I'm often asked as well is who should be involved with 5S? So if you're working within your construction site, think of the people that are passing through that given area or the people that are involved with that phase of the construction. They're the ones for me that are key to 5S. The people at the workplace, the people doing the activity. But also for 5S to embed, it really is important that the team, the support teams are involved as well, whether it be procurement, whether it be quality, whether it be the health and safety team, but also some of the management team, get them involved as well. Because as part of 5S, we have the sustainment, which is the 5th S. And if we don't get buy-in across the different levels and the different functions within a business, 5S won't work as expected. Workplace organisation is about the overall thinking about how do we organise ourselves to give ultimate value in everything we do to our customer or client. That's a very good question. How do you persuade people who might not be willing to change? So I would never go into an area and force people to do 5S. What I would do is these people and getting them on board is to understand some of the pain points they have. So if we identify that we've got issues around how materials are stored or the utilization of equipment or even the maintenance of equipment, I would go in there and start to talk with the teams to say, okay, how's today been? Has it been a good day? Has it been a bad day? What sort of things are we seeing from that team? What's causing them a frustration? And then maybe start to think about, well, is there a better way? And start to think about that 5S from that perspective. Maybe that some of the people that you're working with, they don't have the right materials on hand in the right place. So it may be through that persuasion and working with them, we start to say, well, how do we get those materials at point of use for you? And can you help us work with that, identifying exactly where things need to be, as opposed to it being just planned in at a high level without the true reality of understanding of what the site looks like at that given time. So how would you persuade people who might not be willing to change? It's through that constant asking, challenging, thinking, understanding what's actually frustrating them. If they still don't want to get involved, what I would do is I would work with them to say, okay then, if you don't want to get involved, don't stop others getting involved with their engagement within the organisation. and just ask them to work with it if they don't physically want to get involved themselves. So I've got 2 other questions on there, so let me just pick these out. So how do you manage resistance to the 5S principle? So again, when we look at the resistance to 5S, it'd be with anything that we try to do for an improvement. I'd be trying to answer the question of what's in it for me or what's in it for them. So if I can look at 5S and I can start to articulate that by doing this improvement, it gives them a net benefit, whether it gives them more free time or it reduces costs or improves the quality of the service, these are the things I would start to challenge that resistance with. Okay. Subcontractors who just push back, some of them will just push back through the fear of the unknown. So it's about embracing what is 5S, what is it that frustrates them, and starting to think about, okay, then what's in it for them if they get involved with this? What will be the net benefit to them? And if we can start to challenge that thinking, they will ultimately get involved with 5S. So can it be used as an expansion of method standards? Absolutely it can. So if you've got standards that you currently have and method standards within your organization, there's nothing stopping you adapting some of the 5S thinking into those method standards and actually writing them into the way that you work. So when you bring on contractors or any supply chain partners, you state to them, this is the way we work and this is the way we deliver our service within our site. Please, we'd like you to follow these same standards, because if you don't, we don't have an overall value-adding value stream. Do you have any case studies or examples of when it's worked really well? We do. And what we'll do is we'll aim to share some of those towards the end of this session. And I'll ask Imogen to share some of those items out. I think she's also got what we call an A3 that we can share with you that talks you through on a page those steps to 5S and things to consider. So we'll also share that out as well. Right then, who within my organization is best to lead this? So in my experience, the people that, method six, okay, let me put that there. Thank you very much. I'll put those 2 together. So yeah, method statements and method standards. For me, I understand what you were saying there. So I would put together, this is how we create the way of working for ourselves. So we may have a number of different organizations on this call today. Don't just replicate what other organizations do. Think about, what does 5S and workplace organization mean to you? And how does that fit within your vision, missions, and values of your organization? And what is your purpose? Okay, so think about it in that way. Answering the question, who within my organization is best to lead this? At the very start, for me, it needs to be somebody that has an influence over a team. They are the ones who would instigate this right from the very start, a leader of a team. But ultimately, once you've got 5S embedded, the leader of 5S is actually everybody, because it becomes inherent in the way you do things. So think about health and safety and where health and safety was in construction 30 years ago and where it is now. And I'm going to use an example of one contractor that we work with. Their statement around health and safety is safety first, second nature. And what they mean by that is that it becomes second nature, that everything within safety, we just do that. So think about how you can think about doing that within 5S, an organization, so that people don't just walk past something that doesn't look right. They actually take action. And you can set challenges and tasks around that. So I recall many years ago, when I was very young, I had a job working for an organization called Center Parcs. And they used to challenge each one of their workers around 5S. And they used to drop rubbish around the site just to see if their employees would pick it up. And under some of the rubbish that they drop on site that the manager would put there, they would put little tokens that says, if you pick this rubbish up, you'd see the token that would give you a reward. So they were positively reinforcing the 5S and the organisation of that facility at Center Parcs. So think about, what is the positive recognition that you give for people to work in an organised way back at work? How do you overcome directors who refuse to change and don't see the benefits? That is a really good challenge. And you've got to think about with your directors, what is it that's important to them? Now, at a director level, some of the things that they'll be looking at is the finances of the organisation. They'll be looking at the return on investment. And if you say you want to have an organised site, they'll just see that that might be a cost to the business. So how can we change that cost to the business to a return on investment? So actually by working more efficiently, we're improving quality, because by having 5S in place, we're not damaging as much material equipment. How do we put to maybe to health and safety director that by having a workplace organisation in place, we're having a positive effect on the number of near misses or potential accidents? So we've got to think about, you overcome the directors by understanding the language that they talk or the things that are important to them. I mentioned this earlier on around the how do you get people that are not willing to change? It's all about understanding the what's in it for them. So for directors, understanding the what's in it for them may be around the financial aspects and implications. For people at the ground level or your subcontractors, it might be, how does it make their day work even better than they planned? How do we remove some of the frustrations that they have? So for the directors, think about some of the pain points they're currently seeing and seeing if some of the things that we've spoken around 5S actually starts to challenge head on some of the things that they're seeing as pain points within their business. Okay then. So let's have a look at some of the questions that are coming through on the chat. So we've got, how do you overcome directors who refuse to change? Done for 25 years, no need to change. They don't seem to take on the benefits. So again, that's like the person that we have on there. It's about that challenging them in a way that makes sense to their language that they speak. Is it something that's hurting them around quality, around cost, around the delivery of project? And if we can start to challenge that actually project completion with improved organisation is more certain, and we won't overrun on programme and the costs won't increase, that potentially will bring them on board. And sometimes it might be you have to have a conversation with your directors, just say, just let me have a go, let me do it. I will prove to you that this will work and will drive the benefits that we need within the organisation. Is there a standard or guideline for 5S? Yes, there is. The standard or guideline is those 5 steps: sort, set in order, shine, standardise and sustain. And what we'll do is we'll share with you at the end of this workshop an A3 document that just talks you through those 5 S's and the things that you need to consider in the application and the delivery of that. Okay. But if you type in 5S or workplace organisation into Google, you will be inundated with lots of organisations that have taken their own viewpoint on how they apply 5S. But my advice is, think about how you want to apply it within your organisation and what is it that you want it to drive. For me, I always look at 5S and workplace organisation based on the value that I offer to my customer and client. So I think about the service that they're expecting from me. How can I set it up in such a way, in an organised way, that everything I need to fulfil their expectation is to hand. It's in the right place. It's functioning right first time, every time. If I have to look for something, the chances are I'm not adding that value to my client or end customer. So then I need to do some work around that 5S, maybe set a new order, maybe set a new standard that others can follow. Okay. Are there any other questions that anybody would like to ask or pose? Okay then. So as we're coming towards the end of this session, I'd like to thank you very much for your time today going through the 5S. And this is just a taster session, a lunch and learn, talking you through a little bit about what 5S is all about and some of the steps and best practices that we have on there. And I hope I've been able to answer some of the questions that you've asked and give you a little bit more detailed understanding of what 5S is. So what I'd also like to do is introduce you to the SurveyMonkey, and there's a link on there that we'd like you to have a look at at your leisure after this session, and just give some feedback around how you felt this Lunch and Learn went for you. Did it meet your expectation? Is there any other support you require, or any feedback you'd like to give us to make this a better experience in the future for others? So please feel free to take a minute to share your feedback with us regarding this workshop. And finally, if there's anything else you need, I've been running this workshop now for the Supply Chain School on behalf of LC International. If there's anything else I can help you with, please feel free to drop me an email or a phone call, or even visit our website. Ourselves and the Supply Chain School are working in partnership in the delivery of this 5S Lunch and Learn. So if there's anything else anybody would like to ask, please feel free to add it on the questions or on the chat function. Other than that, I'd just like to thank you very much for your time today, and I wish you well with your 5S journey.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Brett. And if anybody does have any more questions, as Brett said, please feel free to contact him or contact myself to get through to Brett. That's brilliant. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your time today.